heard y'all like lists. So today we're going to talk about bad player habits at the Dungeons and Dragons table. I really enjoy making these videos, and it's probably because I'm a big believer in self-reflection. I know whenever I make any video on bad habits or things to avoid, etc., I get really dumb comments in the vein of, "You're just gatekeeping, Blair, you're hating on new players." Yeah, I don't believe that. I believe that if you can't be critical of yourself without throwing a hissy fit, that's not healthy for a better gaming environment. I like to work on myself. I enjoy the process of improving, and I feel that most people out there do as well. At least I hope so. We all want to be better role players, right? And hopefully this video of bad D&D player habits will help you do just that. Feeling cheeky today. As I go through this list, don't use it, please don't use it as moments to point out things that all your friends do that annoy you, but earnestly ask yourself if these are bad habits that you're getting into or falling into. Because the thing with bad habits is that they can affect brand new players and 20-year veterans alike. So I'm looking at you 2-hit armor class 0 players. First up is one that I think probably 70% or even higher are guilty of from time to time, and some of you do this more than just occasionally, and that's cut off another player or the DM. I'll be candid, this one is subjectively irritating for me because I absolutely believe that more often than not, it comes from a place of genuine excitement rather than purposefully being dismissive. The problem is that regardless of the underlying intention, it always seems dismissive to the person whom you cut off. A lot of this is common sense, social interaction, but before you dismiss this as a problem you don't have, I challenge you to really pay attention during your next gaming session and see if there aren't a few instances where you cut someone short. If so, work on it. Next up, we have another bad habit in a similar vein, run-on sentences / monologuing. If you've ever sat down at a table with someone with this problem, you'll know it gets old fast. I know you're eager to roleplay. I know you have an opinion on everything that's happening in game. Everyone does. It would be weird not to have an opinion on things that happen to your character or decisions that need to be made by the party. But maybe you might let one or two things slide by without inserting said opinion. My advice is to consider how long you are speaking to get your point across to your teammates. How long are you talking uninterrupted? Maybe an NPC died and your character took it incredibly hard. Maybe that's even the right time to have a little development for your character and to roleplay and show that your character is taking it hard. But if you're doing this every other session, that's a problem. And it's a habit you should try to find a way to break. So take a breath, make your point shorter, show don't tell, and you might be surprised at how much more PC to PC interaction this will open up if you give your fellow party members a chance to join in your conversation instead of monologuing at them. Number 3 is an issue that, as a dungeon master, this just really annoys me, and that's using an ability in combat that you don't know. There's only a mild bit of new player or maybe brand new character that I think is socially acceptable if you do something that you need help with from the table. But if you brazenly cast a spell and you haven't even bothered to look up whether it's a wisdom save or a dexterity save and you're not sure what your spell DC is, that's a terrible player habit that you need to break. Some of the stuff on this list is a little more subjective, like talking over people. This is not. If you're in the habit of using abilities, casting spells, grappling, shoveling, giving a condition to an enemy, and you are totally fine pawning it off on the DM to figure out what those things do mechanically without at least putting in an effort to look it up, that's a bad habit that needs to go. The DM may have 4 other players and 12 other enemies with 3 different stat blocks that they are working with, trying to keep things flowing and the pace up. Have a little common courtesy and pull up the paralyzed condition if you're about to cast Hold Person. Simply put, take responsibility and put in an effort. To not do so and not care if you're bogging down the game for the rest of your playing group is simply rude and inconsiderate. All right, let's once again keep things in the similar vein here and talk about rulings. The next bad habit is talking over your DM when they're making a ruling. Sometimes when players try to pull off a bit of hijinks or do something totally bizarre that might even throw off an experienced DM for a moment, they have to pause and think about how to rule it. The DM might sort of end up talking it out with their group right there on the spot. Or maybe it's as simple as a rule that could be interpreted 2 ways as written. This is something that even I do from time to time, which is involve the players in my thought process as a sort of, I'm trying to be fair and impartial here. Let's look at it logically. But even if I talk it out with the players and they give me their clarification on what they're trying to do, I am going to make a decision as the DM. The bad habit that players get into sometimes is that they totally break down and just start talking over one another and the DM. The best analogy I can give to this is a comedian on stage. Maybe they involve the audience in a few jokes, or maybe they even get heckled by someone who's had a bit too much to drink up front. But then others start shouting at the stage, all trying to be involved in the process, and it becomes chaotic and throws the performer off their rhythm. Same thing here. When the DM starts to talk things out and make their ruling, don't talk over them when they're making said ruling. Also, while we're on the subject, our next bad habit is arguing about those rulings in the middle of a game. Again, going back to our table discussion, it's totally fine to give your opinion on a ruling if, and only if, the DM asks for it. But once they make their ruling, that's the end of it. But players who are really comfortable with the DM because they've been bestest friends foreverist sometimes fall into the bad habit of continuing to argue their point. After all, the DM's really just their best friend that they've, known for 15 years. They're having another argument. But this is a bad habit. If you aren't satisfied with your DM's rulings, that's actually fine. Just talk about it after the game. Or better yet, write it down and discuss it with them a few days later, once everyone has had a chance to let the emotion of the situation cool off a bit. Our next bad habit is one that I think a lot of newer players have, but trust me, I've seen my fair share of veterans with this habit, and that's having their character try and do everything. I mean everything. Let's pretend you're playing a cleric or bard, and the moment combat ends, you immediately are like, hey, everyone stop. I'm healing all of you. Take 10 points of healing. Everyone stop what you're doing. I'm healing you. And while you're doing this, the party's rogue is trying to search the room and they roll a 10. And then you jump right back in, well, DM, can I search the room then? And then when the rogue finds something in the next room, you're immediately like, I cast detect magic. I want to make a check to identify it. I take it from him. I'm proficient with thieves' tools. I try to pick the lock. Oh, I want to make an insight check to see if the guard is lying. And so on. Basically, the moment anything happens in game, you eagerly try to jump into the middle of it with your character, even if there are other party members that might be better or, hell, even just equally suited for it. Once again, I get it. You're excited, but chill out a bit. You might think that if you're not propelling the game forward, no one in your party will. But if you can break the habit of always trying to jump in the middle of everything happening in the game, you might be surprised at how the rest of the group begins to be more extroverted. All they need is a chance to get a word in. The next habit is one that I will admit will secretly make me want to kill your character out of spite. Yes, you heard that right. And that's rolling before you've been asked to, i.e. I search the room too, 16 on investigation DM, or I want to make an insight to see if she's lying, 23, or I sneak up behind him and pick his pocket, 19 sleight of hand. Please don't ever roll for a check unless you're asked to. This is a habit that if you have, you should work on breaking it. If you assume a roll at my table, I will most likely embarrass you in front of the group. I know that might sound a little dickish for someone who teaches patience on YouTube at the table, but everyone has their breaking point, and this one is personally mine. I cannot stand it. Oh, people are going to unsub. Also, just for the record, if you instead describe what your character does and ask your DM questions, you might be surprised by the fact that they may not even ask for a roll. They may say, sure, you push the rock out of the way, you break down the jammed door, you cross the bridge safely. But if you roll before being asked, you run the risk of rolling a 1 or a 2, etc. on the die, and suddenly the DM goes with it. And now you've created an obstacle for yourself. There are plenty of times where a player is prepared to make a roll, and I just say, don't worry about it. Your character is very gifted, and I don't need a roll for this. She just succeeds at it. Just a little word of advice. The next bad habit is something I personally consider cheating. And I've seen literally scores and scores of players do this, even on streams on Twitch and YouTube, and that's rolling the wrong thing in Fantasy Grounds or another online tabletop, seeing that it's low and going, oh, I meant to roll persuasion, not perception, and then re-rolling it and getting a higher result. But on the other hand, when they roll well with their first roll with the wrong modifier, they say, well, I meant to roll persuasion, so my modifier is really a +5 instead of a +2, so that's actually a 19 now. I know this pertains to online games, but this is a really lame habit that I think people do instinctively, but at the end of the day, this is cheating. If you have this habit, cut it out. And finally, we have another bad habit which I believe is done innocently enough, but it's still something you should work on, and that's always making the perfect choice via metagaming. I get it. It's hard not to metagame. It's not natural to make decisions in character when you know you aren't making either the optimal or sometimes even the right choice. But I want to brag on a player in one of my 2 patron games at the moment. Mike is a dungeon master. Mike has been a dungeon master for, well, a while. Sorry, Mike. Mike 100% knows that trolls in 5e continue to regenerate unless you hit them with fire or acid. So when the party was ambushed by a pair of trolls, I could see it in his eyes that he absolutely knew 100% how to fight them. But we each gave each other a subtle nod and he just grinned and kept quiet. And when my other players, who are newer and apparently had never seen a troll in-game before, were stunned when the trolls dropped to 0 and then got right back up the next round and the next round after that, only then did Mike ask to make an intelligence check. His character succeeded and I simply asked him, "Do I need to tell you?" He said, "Nope." And then in character, he proceeded to play off the knowledge that fire or acid damage stops their regenerative abilities as if he was genuinely racking his brain searching for the answer, again, in character. It was awesome. And because he chose not to metagame the situation, the other players were not robbed of that experience facing trolls for the very first time. So if you feel like you always metagame, choosing the exact perfect set of spells for your enemy, calling out to the party out of character that you're probably facing a Medusa when you start to see statues, or yelling out that an aboleth will give melee players a disease if they get hit with its tentacles when you haven't even actually seen it yet, and so on, you should probably work on kicking that bad habit and see if it doesn't make the experience a little better for the table, or at least for the DM, right? So that's it, guys. A few bad player habits that newbies and veterans alike get into. So the question is, what did I miss? Showing up late, always playing perfect characters, telling other players what to do with their characters. What got left off this list? What are the bad habits that need to go? I want to give a massive thank you to my amazing patrons over at welcomeadventures.com. If you guys like what I do here, you want to support more content like this, welcomeadventures.com is a great way to support the channel and snag some extra rewards for yourself. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I would love to have you subscribe. Every week I put out new videos on GM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more, so if that sounds like something you might be interested in, just hit the subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time. Please, 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 yeah.